We ask you and your colleagues to support our request and to move this legislation forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Rabbi. Dr. Trachtenberg, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Goodlatte, Ranking Member Conyers, and members of this committee. It's an honor to be here today to testify on the issue of anti-Semitism on college campuses. I'm grateful that you're soliciting a wide range of voices on this important subject because the right of students and faculty to express diverse views is precisely what is at stake in the current attempts to limit campus speech. It's increasingly common to hear reports that a new anti-Semitism threatens to engender students on a scale not seen since the Second World War and the Holocaust. Studies from several major organizations have sounded the alarm that anti-Semitism is a clear and present danger, while a number of commentators have argued that yet another war against the Jews is upon us. However, they're motivated less by an actual threat facing American or world Jewry than they are part of a persistent campaign to thwart debates, scholarly research, and political activism that's critical of the state of Israel. The truth is that the old anti-Semitism, such as we saw in Charlottesville this summer, where torch-bearing marchers carried Nazi and Confederate flags and chanted, "You Jews will not replace us," and murdered a protester, is still alive in the United States and requires vigilant and persistent resistance. Legislation such as the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act, however, is not a genuine attempt to contend with actual anti-Semitism, but rather is an attempt to quell what are in fact protected acts of speech that are vital and necessary to the scholarly missions of educational institutions and to the functioning of democratic societies. It's a factual distortion to characterize campuses in the United States as hotbeds of new anti-Semitism. A recent study by researchers at Stanford University reported that while depictions of rampant anti-Semitism are widely reported in the press, they do not represent the actual experiences of Jewish students at the campus level. They discovered that campus life is neither threatening nor alarmist. In general, students reported feeling comfortable on their campuses, and more specifically, feeling comfortable as Jews on their campuses. Much of the testimony you'll hear today is likely to argue that anti-Semitism is at crisis levels. I urge you to be skeptical of such claims. First, many of the stories that get wide circulation contain factual distortions and are misrepresented in the media. Second, many studies are based on a definition that defines criticism of Israel as inherently anti-Semitic. Rather, students who engage in speech that's critical of Israeli policy are largely motivated by their concern for Palestinian human rights. They are not motivated by anti-Semitic speech, but its opposite, a desire to end racial and religious discrimination of all kinds. It is profoundly difficult to create a definition of anti-Semitism for legislative purposes. The root of current debates in anti-Semitism lie in a seemingly intractable problem of how to critique Jewish collective power in a way that does not immediately resonate with a long history of anti-Semitism. Throughout the last 1,000 years of European history, Jews were regularly characterized as an incommensurate and exceptionalist element who sought to undermine the established religious, political, and economic order. In each of those moments, Jews were imagined as a united group that possessed power and authority far beyond their actual numbers. Yet in 1948, with the founding of Israel as a solution to anti-Semitism, the situation changed dramatically. For the first time, a significant number of Jews gained actual and not imaginary power. Today, the state of Israel has borders, police, courts, a military, a nuclear arsenal, political parties, a mostly representative and somewhat democratic system of government. Like all other states, its actions must be permitted to be a matter of public debate and discourse both within the Jewish community and outside of it. Yet speech that's critical of Israel still strikes many as inherently anti-Semitic. The problem is we are still learning how to talk about Israel's actual political power in ways that do not immediately echo much older and anti-Semitic depictions of imaginary Jewish power. This is not only on account of the long history of anti-Jewish hatred in the West, it is also because, as we see in legislative initiatives such as these, to characterize any speech that's critical of Israel as intrinsically anti-Semitic has been a highly effective tool employed by those who uncritically support every action of Israel and seek to stigmatize all critics. It would be ill-advised for Congress to establish legal authority on a definition of anti-Semitism that is so deeply contested. To insist that Israel cannot be protested or objected to mandate that collective Jewish power cannot be analyzed or debated, or to conclude that Jews, because they were once victims of humanity's greatest genocidal crimes, are somehow immune from becoming perpetrators of violence against other peoples, reinforces the anti-Semitic belief that Jews are a fundamentally different people. Most dangerously of all, attempts to broaden the definition of anti-Semitism to encompass phenomena that are clearly not anti-Jewish can only make it more difficult to recognize, isolate, and oppose actual anti-Semitic hatred when it does appear. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Clement, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Conyers. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a particular privilege to be